everybody. Jordan Bradford here with Jeff Beck. We are back with part 2 of Just Ballin' with JB, brought to you by D. Oliver Design. For all your commercial graphic design needs, visit dolliverdesign.com. All right, we got a lot to talk about here NFL-wise. We're going to start with a quick fantasy football update, though. And Jeff and I find ourselves locked in a tight playoff race in the league with both of us sitting at 7-5. Jeff, you're in third place now, so yeah, things have been trending in the right direction for you. My loss last week took me back from second to fourth, and we both got to get a win here this week, though. With the way as tight as this goes, you can't really afford to lose any of these games here down the stretch. But what are your thoughts on the way this season is shaping up here?
Yeah, I think a win gets us in. I get to 8-5, it would probably be tough. But yeah, I think the bad spot, sitting in third place, the only bad thing to think about is, 6 and 7 are one game back. Those guys are at 6-6, is it? So yeah, you slip up, miss 2 here is a problem. So yeah, it's tight. It should be a lot of fun. My kind of couple positive thoughts are number 2 in scoring overall. So I got the tiebreaker on, you, and I think number 5 is what we got the same record, but having that gap is nice for a little bit of tiebreaker. And back-to-back weeks with the high score, 157 this week. I think it was 160 last week. So, and Breece Hall was out this week. They had the bye. So getting him, that trade, and then getting Nico Collins back, I think it's going to be huge. I think I mentioned to you my quarterback play. If anyone's got any advice, Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson, those are the two I'm going back and forth on week after week after week. I think I've dropped them both, picked them both back up, sat them both. So, yeah, that's really the big question mark for me, either picking the right one or hoping that both of them get some stuff going in a positive direction. Caleb did this last weekend. Anthony Richardson was a bust. Anthony Richardson was good last week. Not good this week. So, yeah, sitting in good shape, third place. We'll take it. Let's get to the playoffs, make it happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't give you any quarterback advice because I don't need you to. I don't need you to win. It's fine if you do, but
someone will send it to me.
Yeah, somebody might. I'm right behind you. You're second in scoring. I'm third in scoring. I feel pretty confident that a win's going to get me in, a win's going to get you in. Even a loss, like if it's a close loss, I feel like I'm probably still going to be, on that playoff cusp. But I'll be playing the number 1 team in the league in my last week. So, I feel, a little bit of pressure to get this win this week so that I don't have to worry about, next week having to come out and play the team with the most amount of points scored and the team who's number 1. So, got to get it done. Can't be losing here at the end of the season if you want to repeat as champ.
Yeah, the opposite of that, repeating as champ, I'm trying to do, kind of the opposite is not have to chug a beer all season. Last 2 years, I was the first week beer chugger, never again, then just one and done. But this week, I've yet to do it. So knock on wood, hopefully we can stay off that train and finish strong.
High floor, low ceiling. All right, let's get into some actual NFL talk here. So let's start off with this NFL MVP race. So just like in college, we've got some running backs, in the NFL, we've got 2 running backs who are certainly making a name for themselves, and then a couple quarterbacks as well. But is the running back a new favorite for NFL MVP? And if not, who do you have at the top of your list?
Man, yeah, another tough one. Similar conversations that we're having. I think we just got to address some of the big questions and figure it out. I heard a lot of talk today, go through the running backs numbers. Any running back, if it's not this year, years past. And it's just, compared to the quarterback, not only does the quarterback run, they also pass, and they're changing in all these things. I think every person who watches football understands the importance of a quarterback, right? We see it, on a weekly basis with teams. When you don't have one of those top-tier quarterbacks, the variation on your team is crazy. You could be terrible. You could be amazing. The 2 quarterbacks I have, Caleb or Anthony Richardson, they've looked incredible in some games, and you see the difference, and they've looked absolutely awful in other games. When you have top-tier quarterbacks, they have that consistency throughout. It makes a huge difference. if we want to make this award a quarterback only, then we should just outline that. Because if we're gonna get to these races where people are doing it, it reminds me of literally college Ashton Gentry. If Saquon sets the all-time record, the all-yard, all-purpose record, from scrimmage, and then he doesn't win it, what are we supposed to do? And there were some examples. I think Chris Johnson said it, he set some either the rushing record or all-purpose yards record, back maybe 10 years ago, and he didn't end up winning the MVP award. Now, I understand if a quarterback is also setting records, then you're going to lean the quarterback way. But if another position is doing everything they can possibly do at that position, right? I mean, I'm not saying one record of touchdowns or receiving means everything, but essentially, if they're setting records and they're doing everything possible at that position, and yet we're not giving it to them, then you have to say that then this just really isn't that possible. Let's just switch it to it's a quarterback only award. And then we know like the offensive player of the year is anything non-quarterback, and that becomes their award. And we separate those. But I mean, I look at it with Barkley. I mean, the numbers are there. Him and Henry, I mean, just incredible. Henry's got more touchdowns. Saquon's got a few more yards. They're both battling. Lamar's having a heck of a year. I think it really, at this point, it's going to come down to not only the quarterback versus other positions, but it's also going to come down to stats versus record, or stats and record combined. And what does that look like? I look at Saquon doing the numbers that he's doing, what people thought of the team. I've been super high on the Eagles all year, even coming past that funk that they had. But a lot of people were absolutely down on them. I mean, we've been talking about the coach getting fired, this, that, the other, all this stuff. And for them to be where they're at, and because of the numbers he is putting up, I give more credit to that. I look at Lamar, and I mean, the numbers are incredible. I mean, there's no question about it. He's blowing every quarterback off the page. But what are they, 7-4? I mean, that's, and we expected them to be at least as good as last year, if not better, getting Derrick Henry. I mean, some people might not have been that high in that acquisition, but we still all thought he would be better than Gus Edwards or Dobbins or somebody. So to me, it's like, the expectation and what they're doing, Lamar's numbers are better. I mean, they're really good. I mean, I get it's quarterback to running back, but I mean, they're impressive numbers. But I look at the winnings, I look at the expectation. I am kind of taking everything into account. If I'm looking at it, I'd probably have Barkley as number one. I'd also give him a slight advantage that you have Derrick Henry and Lamar on the same team. I don't think that should be something that drops those guys further, because I also think if you're doing that well with you have other talent on your team is pretty impressive. But I just think based on what we expected from the Eagles, or most people did, I got to be leaning his way based on what he's done, stats-wise and impact-wise, that you can see visually.
Yeah, I think this comes down to one key piece of information, and it's how many quarterbacks or how many players in NFL history have ever won 3 NFL MVP awards or more. And currently there are 6 guys, and I'll give you the name of those 6 guys. You've got Peyton Manning, who has the most. He's got 5 MVP awards. Aaron Rodgers is second with 4. And then Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Jim Brown, and Johnny Unitas all have 3. And if Lamar wins his 3rd MVP award here, he will join that list of guys with 3 MVPs or more. And to me, if you're going to be a part of that list, there's one thing all those guys have in common. And it's not even that they're all quarterbacks, because Jim Brown, running back, they all have won a championship. Now, Jim Brown never won a Super Bowl, but he won an NFL championship before they had the Super Bowl. And Johnny Unitas won 3 championships and then a Super Bowl, so he has 4. Everybody knows what Tom Brady's done, Peyton Manning's done, Aaron Rodgers has a Super Bowl, Brett Favre has a Super Bowl. You can't be, it's just like anything else. You can't be a 3-time MVP of the league, but yet you can't even get to a Super Bowl. So to me, I get it. If Lamar does not have a record-setting year this year, which he's having a great year, probably his best year of his career, honestly, which is just kind of, crazy to say that he's having the best year of his career probably. but doesn't deserve the MVP. Because in my mind, unless you're going to set a record in the NFL this year, you can't give that award to him again until he's proven it in the playoffs. Because if you're the best player in the NFL or the best quarterback and you can't get your team even to a Super Bowl, then I think there's something wrong there. And then on the flip side, I just think Saquon is having such a good season. Look back to the last non-quarterback to win a MVP award was Adrian Peterson in 2012. Through 12 weeks, Adrian Peterson had 1,236 rushing yards. Saquon's got 1,392. So he's beating him. He has 70 more receiving yards, 5 more touchdowns, and his team record is 9-2 versus Adrian Peterson on the Vikings that year were 6-5. Saquon's clearly affecting winning, which is, if you're going to say most valuable, he's clearly been super valuable to that team. That team was in shambles at the end of last year. Yes, they were very talented, but clearly not playing up to their capabilities. You plug him in, have a career year, might set the all-purpose yards record. I think Saquon's the runaway MVP at the moment, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah, I think I think we're on the same page with it. I think it's hard to look at it a whole lot differently when I see not only those numbers that you mentioned, but I also, like I said, I try to look at some of the outside factors as well that kind of come into play with it. And to me, the impact on the team and the morale seems to be, it seems just every single thing you hear or see, it seems like not only a little, like if you had to gauge it, like a little positive, it seems like it's actually kind of like instrumental in making things better. I mean, he came over. I mentioned the quote we were talking about Nick Sirianni, 2-3 weeks ago, about him possibly getting fired. And he was in an interview talking about how his style is very different to his, but that he appreciates that he understands, he likes that he's willing to show his passion, be who he is. And he knows it's different than it. It's not what he would do. He's not looking like, I wish I could be that guy. But he's like, I appreciate that he's authentic, being himself. And I know that we can figure out a way to do this. You could sit there and say that's just him kissing ass. You could say that just maybe he just has a personal liking. But if you don't think that sits with everybody in the locker room here and now, like, well, Saquon, who's doing backwards, jumps over people and duking people like he's on, Madden, if he's doing that, then they're like, why can't we get on the same page as that? Though that's like one small thing, but like I think that stuff is huge. You saw him last year with the Giants when he was going for like that rushing to get so many yards or whatever, and he was like, no, let the other guys do it. I mean, that was a great indication of like the type of guy he is. You watch him this year, this last game, I think Gainwell, I was Max. I wanted Saquon on my fantasy team to get another touchdown, but Gainwell, runs it from like 14 out. The first guy in the end zone is Saquon, like amping him up, like jumping for joy. That was his first touchdown of the year, I'm pretty sure. And he's like, dude, like that's awesome. Like, good for you that like you're doing that stuff. He's got the little TikTok dance with not only is he's bringing AJ Brown in to do it for his touchdown celebration, but it's the Jared McCain TikTok. I mean, I know it's not his, but he's been known for doing it. A Philadelphia 76, like he's bringing like everybody together and being like, this is what I've always wanted. I thought we would be able to build this in New York, and not only did you guys not really want me there all that much, but like you weren't really able to build around me, do all this stuff. Like I feel like just the other stuff outside of even the stats and truly what he's doing on the field, it's been like night and day. And again, I was kind of feeling this way even 5-6 weeks ago. Just like I think the team is getting there. I didn't really realize the Saquon maybe impact, but I think he's like, you guys got it really good here. I think you guys need to understand what we have, what we're capable, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure you guys can understand. Any little riffs, any little disagreements with people, like we got some serious stuff here that we can make happen. You got a city, a fan base that is absolutely dying for us to do well, like some of the craziest, best fans. Like, let's make it happen. Let's go out and do it. And I think that impact has to be accounted for. I know you can't really count how that impacts it, but I think you have to factor that in compared to, again, last year. Like, expectations do mean something. And I think that's just been, incredible to watch.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels like we've been robbed of Saquon Barkley the last, 6 or 7 years being in New York, playing with that terrible franchise. I mean, yes, I get historically they're an all-time franchise, but, they have been a dumpster fire of an organization basically since Eli Manning left. And even Eli Manning wasn't the greatest quarterback in the world. He still won 2 Super Bowls. I get it, especially over the Patriots. Those are big wins, but the Giants have been awful, and he still, was playing great when he was playing for them. For him to have this type of year in his first season with a new team and get that team back, in the right, position mentally and just like from a on-field performance standpoint, I think that's exactly what an MVP is. And he's got the numbers to back it up too. So I think he's doing enough on both sides of it to easily be able to prove like, if you're ever going to give it to a non-QB, this is the year to do it. And, if he were to somehow fall off and Derrick Henry keeps up his track, I could see you giving it to Derrick Henry for the same reasons. But I do think, team record does have a little bit to do with it, in my opinion. And if if the Eagles end up, being a much better record than the Ravens, the Eagles beat the Ravens this week, which, might come up a little bit later. But if that happens, then I think also that puts him in a spot of like, hey, like, we got to be thinking about him for MVP. And I'd love to see it for him. I think it would be awesome.
I think those battles make it fun too. It's not all about those battles, but they're fun and they're a point to it. And the last thing I was going to say, I meant to mention it last time when you said it, but I hate to be the person who kind of does things on like a negative basis. And I mentioned even in like the college side of things, teams that have not had a strength of schedule where it needs to be, just kick them out. And like, I hate to have that kind of negative look. I want it to be more the positive, like when you have a positive this or you have a positive that. So I was just going to comment when you mentioned like if he doesn't and like Lamar wins it, that puts him at 3 and he's in this company. Like I hate to look at it and say, well, whether it's Jokic, if you win 3 straight, if you win 3, that puts you in here and you haven't done this and like you don't quite deserve it. Because like at the end of the day, it should be kind of looked at in a vacuum. Like what this season are you doing to be the most valuable player? But the flip side to that is all the positive things that don't get rewarded. And it's not just LeBron. Obviously, we're a big fan of his, and he's still, in the moment, still playing. How many MVP awards he should have won that he didn't because it was like boredom and it was the new exciting player and it was, can he win 4 in a row or can he be at this level? Does that make sense with the championships? Like it just is, and he's not the only one. Michael Jordan is obviously the biggest, compared to everything that he's trying to accomplish. He was also did not get MVP awards that he probably should have won. Some of these greatest players of all time that consistently put out just, I mean, when we go back and look at LeBron's history, like it will be insane to look at how consistently he put up these numbers and how infrequently he actually won MVP. So my point is, I hate to look at that and be like, Lamar, sorry, man, you already won 2. You haven't even been in the Super Bowl, and like these guys have. But unfortunately, you kind of have to because the flip side again to it's just not there. When guys are just consistently doing it and should win it, they're not getting it. So you almost have to have that negative outlook. And again, it's not the one I like to have, but unfortunately, I do think you have to factor that in a little bit. So I do agree with you.
Yeah. And I get that point too. I think though that, to that point though, you're talking about LeBron and Michael, and it's like those guys not only were the best players in the league in pretty much every year they played, for the most part. Now, give or take a few for LeBron because he's played so many, and same with, Michael, but like clearly both of them deserve way more MVPs than they were ever awarded with. But also they proved that by then in the playoffs being phenomenal and, raising their game in the playoffs. And when you see a guy who doesn't raise his, level of performance in the playoffs, it just makes it tougher for me to look at that and say, is he one of the guys that like deserves to be the most awarded or decorated players from an MVP level perspective? And it's like, I don't know, like I just need to see it. And hopefully one of these years hopefully it's this year, Lamar balls out in the playoffs. Like, even if they don't win the Super Bowl, if he plays great, I think that will change the narrative. But he's got to play great. Like, he cannot go out and have a dud in the playoffs and they lose out in their first game. It's just such a bad look for him.
No, and we got to move on to the newcomers in the league. To that point, it's always been I always say that with the NBA MVP, it was like, well, they haven't done anything in the playoffs. Like, this is a regular season award. And like, I think that's also what makes it really difficult. Is like, we've all seen what Lamar's done. We've all seen what James Harden has done. We've seen what Embiid's done. And you're like, I want you to do it in the playoffs. Cause to me, like, the most valuable player would take their team to the playoffs and do well. Like, that is what the regular season MVP should do. So I think in a singular season, we could be like, okay, you had a great regular season. You deserve the award pre-playoffs. But now once you have a playoff history, it should factor in until you prove it. Because I think, to me, the way I would look at MVP, if you're the most valuable player, you are going to bring it in the biggest times, in the biggest moments for your team. And now that you have a track record to that, I think that should actually play a fact. Even though it's a regular season award, that's fine. But now that we have a track record of your lack of success in the postseason, I think it should. It should kind of circle to that. But I think that is pushback a lot of people give. It's like, it's regular season only. What he does doesn't matter. And it's like, okay, I hear you, but that kind of sucks. That takes away from the award a little bit. But anyway, we got to jump into new players in the league. Why don't you tee us up on this one?
Yeah, so we got some rookie QBs making their mark this season in the NFL, and a couple who haven't had a chance to really make much of a mark yet. But this last NFL draft, we saw 6 QBs go in. I believe it was like the first 12 or 13 picks in the draft, which I think was a record. I'm sure it was. So we thought, we're a little over halfway through the season, kind of getting into the that playoff picture now. A number of these guys have gotten a chance to get out onto the field. In fact, everybody but J.J. McCarthy has seen at least, some action now. And so we thought we'd do a little ranking here of, the rookie QBs, and with the caveat of, not just, how they've performed this year, but with their performance this year, where do we have them projected going forward in their careers? So, Jeff, do you want to kick us off and tell us who you've got at number 1 for rookie QBs as they project
Number
forward?
1 or number 6? I wanted to start at 6.
Oh, we can start at number 6. Let's start at number 6. Yeah, let's
Oh
work
yeah,
our
we
way
should
to the top.
number 1. That's true, but yeah, rather
We should start at number 6. Yeah, I like that better. So at number 6, I'm sure this isn't going to be a shocker, but who you got?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I started 6 is I hadn't given as much thought to this list, kind of updating it as we go. But yeah, I think 6, I got to go J.J. McCarthy. Not because I don't actually think he might do well in the future. Obviously, he's been hurt the whole time. I would say he was probably bottom 2 on the list, to begin with coming into the year. I think it was probably Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy, I would guess, were, the 2 bottom ones, just as far as what we thought kind of their ceiling could be and what they could be on a team. I think we liked the Viking structure that they had, and so we felt like, okay, maybe he could come in and be okay. And I thought he might, be okay. But he got hurt, and so the fact that he was already kind of in that bottom tier spot of those 6 quarterbacks coming in, hasn't gotten a chance to play, I think I just have to do that. I think he reminds me of a guy kind of what they have right now there. Sam Darnold's in there. I mean, a Brock Purdy, I think coming into a really good system, a good coach, some offensive weapons. I think he can come in and be totally fine. I think he can have a very solid, nice career. I just don't think we're ever going to look at him as like a top 10 quarterback. I think he could regularly fall between that 10 and 20. He's good. He's consistent because he's on a good team. He's got good players, got a good defense. I think he could fall into that realm. But when I think of him just like kind of personally being a quarterback and where we might be able to rank him in the future, I'd probably say I think I got to put him at the bottom just based on what I've seen and kind of what I'm thinking moving forward. So, yeah, I'd put him at number 6.
Yeah, there's not really much to add to that, honestly. I mean, he hasn't played any games yet. We haven't seen anything from him. He was the, guy I thought maybe he'd be a little bit better than Bo Nix, honestly, heading into the season, and maybe even better than, Drake May potentially. But I wasn't high on those guys to start the season. So, but yeah, again, he hasn't played any. We're not going to see him until next year. So he's basically getting a pass for this season. We'll see what he can do. Maybe this year off will actually be a benefit to him. It'll give him a chance to kind of acclimate into the NFL a little bit as a, not necessarily backup, but just learn from another quarterback, learn the system a little bit better. So there are some positives. If you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, like I wouldn't be upset that, McCarthy's 6th on this list, because at the end of the day, clearly you got a great coach. Everybody knows that. You've got weapons, and you have a rookie quarterback who's getting a full year under his belt to learn the system. So there's some positives there, but yeah, he's got to be the 6th guy, because nobody has played so poorly that it's obvious they've got no chance, right?
Yeah,
so
agree.
he's got to be that guy, unfortunately. Let's move on to number 5, and this is kind of a tough one. I would say as of right now, currently based on kind of the same reasons for JJ McCarthy being at 6, I think you got to put Penix in at number 5. I like Penix. I do, part of me thinks Penix actually has a higher ceiling than a couple other guys on this list. Downside is I don't know what the Falcons are doing. And they gave Kirk Cousins such a big contract. I don't know if the Falcons are going to be ready to move off from Kirk Cousins even after this season. Whether they should or shouldn't, that's another debate for another time. But I think that Penix might just not get an opportunity quick enough. And he was already the oldest guy, or I think maybe second oldest. Maybe Bo Nix was a little older than him. But Penix is just as old, I think. So, Penix is like a 25-year-old rookie quarterback. He's got to get an opportunity. Like, I think people were saying that, he likely wasn't going to get an opportunity until he's 27. Well, that's how old Sam Darnold is. Like, it's insane. Like, I don't think that that's a good situation for him in the grand scheme of things, to be stuck behind a aging quarterback with a huge contract that I think the owner is going to have a hard time moving off of. So I've got to put Penix in at number 5. And I think a lot of that has to do with his circumstance that he's in and just really not getting much of an opportunity to play. And I wonder, how that affects you. You go 2 years without playing football, in actual games. That's got to build some rust. And, I just don't know if that's going to be detrimental to his long-term development.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think to your point, you kind of got to put him there. I mean, like, I don't know. I was curious where you'll have Bo Nix at, but yeah, I mean, to move him when he's potentially the rookie of the year feels obviously like crazy to move him down at this point. So I think you got to put him there. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes. I think he's got a lot of potential. Obviously, you thought he might get in the first 4 weeks or whatever it was that you said, and I kind of thought similarly, at least, that he'd be in sooner rather than later. Like something would occur. And I mean, there's a lot of talk of, Kirk not even being able to move anymore. I mean, that's been kind of the chatter in the media. I don't know what they're seeing on film. I don't know what they're thinking. But I mean, we just saw Daniel Jones get cut. I mean, we saw Russell Wilson 2 years. I mean, these teams are, I think, smartly, in my opinion. I mean, look at Denver is a great example of that. We'll see what the Giants can do now all of a sudden. But, you get rid of that and you just you move on, you make something happen, and we understand what the impact is of that, right? We understand the money impact that's going to have on the franchise. But, we've talked about it a million times. It's a sunk cost at this point. You are going to pay this money regardless. Do you want to suffer with this guy? Do you want to have somebody who you can give an opportunity to give a chance to? It depends where you're at, right? We talked about the Colts. Did it make sense for them to put Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson? Probably not. Flacco doesn't have much time left in this league. He looked good for where he's at in his age and give him a lot of credit. But what are you guys trying to accomplish? It probably makes sense to just keep Anthony. You've already had him in. Let him go. Let him do his thing. And so I think you just that's a huge question mark. And so we'll see. I think either way, I do agree he's going to be obvious. I mean, it's not really an agreement. He is an older quarterback, possibly getting a start. So that is obviously question for concern, but I think he's going to be good. I really liked what I saw from him the last time we saw him on the field. You could use like a Jordan Love or somebody who sat behind somebody for a while. I mean, even the Sam Darnold, they've had opportunities to play, but then they sit. I think there's a good chance he can do well. So I mean, I think we got to put him there, but I am pretty high on what we could see from him. I do like what his upside is.
I should say I'm bullish on Penix if he gets to play legitimate football before the end of next season. But if it takes him another full year of sitting behind Kirk Cousins, which I'm just afraid it's going to, because Cousins, as I look at it here, for them to cut Kirk Cousins this year would be a $90 million of dead cap. That's, obviously they're not going to cut him this year. If they cut him next year, it's $65 million of dead cap, which is still a crazy number. After that, they can cut him for $35 million of dead cap, which I think they can split over a couple years. So, that makes it doable. But still, my point is like if Penix doesn't get to play until at the end of next season, or really going into what would be the 2026 football season, I just think that puts him behind the 8 ball in development. You wonder, like, yes, the Falcons have got some weapons now, but eventually they got to pay those guys. And if you have this rookie quarterback who's going to be at the tail end of his rookie contract and you're going to have to worry about paying him, it just is, it was just bad management by the Falcons to set their team up this way, in my opinion. I think if you're going to give Kirk Cousins that contract, you shouldn't have drafted Penix. Or you should have drafted Penix and, got like a Sam Darnold, like the Vikings did, to just get a bridge quarterback for a year. But, alas, that's what it is. So we got Penix in at 5. Who you got at number 4? This is, could be interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you keep going through this list, I laugh because we're talking about like the college football playoff, and it's like, what do you want? Do you want the best teams, or you want the teams that earned it, or talking about the MVP? Is it the most valuable? But we decided on this topic, and yet it's still hard to just like, we said it's not who's playing the best this year, but we said it's more long term. But is it like who is going to have the best career? Is it who do you want for the next 5 years? Like, even we didn't clarify it, so it's kind of hard to say. I think I gotta go with Drake May at number 4. I think I got to put him there. I'm looking at, and not to spoil whatever your next pick will be, but for me, I was looking at Drake May and Bo Nix as kind of the two that I'm looking to put there. Bo Nix having a great season. I do think there's potential. It looks a little quicker, similar to how Jaden looked in the first 6 games. Bo could have a nice year. He fits in. He does some stuff, but like how high is his peak really? I don't know why. This might not be accurate, and it might not be apparent yet. I'm hoping it will be. But I look at Drake May has kind of like a, what's his name on the Chargers right now? Justin Herbert. He's a feel to me of that, where he's clearly has a lot of talent. He's really good. He needed to be reined in, but being reined in almost makes him way too conservative. I mean, people are watching last night. It's like, throw the ball. Like, well, this dude's got a cannon. We've seen some of the numbers he's done. Like, throw the ball some. Like, we get running it. We get even running it more than passing it. But, like, we got to do these things. Drake May feels kind of like that. Like, I like the arm. I think I know what he can potentially do in that regard. But I feel like he, even with a better line, even with a better, whether it is new coaching, whatever happens with that team, at least a better line, I think he'll still make some, stupid plays, some just kind of like, what are you doing plays? And if he tries to run it back, he might go too much back. Where I think Bo Nix, and again, I'm not getting into the next pick or wherever you might have him, but he almost feels more of like a Baker Mayfield, where he might adapt to like, all right, we got to rein you in because you're crazy, but you still do kind of crazy stuff, and you're kind of one of those guys that does the intangible things. Like that's how I feel about him. So I had those guys kind of like next to each other, just as far as what I think can be a career for them, kind of their peak, trying to mix and match those a little bit. But I had to put Drake May, behind him just because I feel like it's a little more Justin Herbert, where at his peak, he'll be more reserved than being able to fully be himself.
Yeah, that's where I would have, Drake May here. And honestly, if Penix had played this season, I think I would probably have Penix ahead of Drake May even. I was not super high on Drake May. I get the arm talent, but we saw another quarterback in the not too distant past that came out of North Carolina with only a handful of starts with decent arm talent come to Chicago Bears and Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
And that's who Drake May reminds me a little bit of. Now, I think Drake May is better than Trubisky, but I think you got a similar guy, not a lot of experience in college. And what experience he did have was more like he kind of wowed you with like he can make some good throws. But he also is one of those guys that you wonder, can he make the easy throws? Can he make the throws that require precision? And you're even seeing it now, like with the Patriots. Like he's kind of letting it rip. And I think that's the right move for the Patriots. So I want to be on record saying I think the Patriots are doing the right thing by just being like, let it rip, man. Like if you throw, an interception, go back out there the next play, you might as well throw a pass again. Like,
Yeah.
we have nothing to lose. We got to figure this out. You need to figure it out as a quarterback. So I think they're doing the right thing there. But I also look at, what they have around them. And I think he's got the worst situation that he's in as it relates to the team around him. Obviously, Penix having to sit behind Cousins for potentially another year or longer. That's a tough situation. But from a talent perspective around him, I think May has the least amount of talent on that team. And the Patriots, in years prior, have not done a very good job of acquiring skill position talent. So we'll see if things change under, new leadership. But at the end of the day, they still have the same, owners, same, guys kind of running that front office that have, allowed Bill Belichick to make a lot of bad draft picks. We'll see if the new guys can, do a little bit better. But that being said, I just think Drake May is, he's got a good arm talent, but we've seen a lot of quarterbacks with good arm talent have pretty mediocre careers in the NFL. And until I see him, affect football games in a positive winning way, I've got to have him, as low as you do. And again, I was tempted to put him below Penix, but I felt like, May has at least gotten to play, and he's been better than I thought he would be.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I had to do him the justice of not putting him behind a guy who basically has only seen a couple garbage time drives. So,
Well, who do you
I've got there.
we got number 3?
Yeah, so number 3 for me, I've got the guy who I think is going to win Rookie of the Year most likely, and that's Bo Nix. And it's nothing against Bo Nix. I actually have been pretty impressed with him compared to what I thought of him coming into this year. Now, I do think he's a good fit with Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton is, proven that, okay, he's got it still on the offensive side. He's done a really good job, I think, of coaching Bo. The one thing that I think drags Bo Nix down compared to the top 2 guys on this list is I think Bo Nix is as close to his ceiling as any of these guys. And, in part that's because he played more college games than any other quarterback in history when he graduated. He had started the most games in college of any quarterback. So, yes, the guy should come into the NFL as prepared as any college quarterback has ever come into the NFL. So I think that makes sense why he's, played well in his rookie season for a rookie. I just think that also shows like he's kind of at his ceiling. If he was one of these guys that had this huge upside, I just don't think he would have stuck around for as long as he did in college. And I don't think he'd have been the last guy off the board in the draft. Now, maybe he'll prove me wrong and everybody else wrong and be, the best out of the draft, but I think he's as close to his ceiling as any of these guys. And I think he's actually pretty close to his ceiling now. I think what we're seeing now is about as good as you're going to see from Bo Nix in his career. Could be wrong, but I don't see, a guy who is going to be, an NFL MVP candidate ever.
Yeah, I did have him one spot above this. I'm guessing we probably have the same person at number one. Yeah, I don't know. As you were talking, I almost kind of started like thinking through more stuff, and it's really an interesting thing because we say that when guys come in and they've been in football for 5 or 6 years, and like we do see that with some quarterbacks sometimes, and I think they're the guys that aren't the electric people, the people that are just like jumping off the page, like we gotta draft them, we gotta get them as soon as we can. They're not those guys. When I look at like the NBA, I think that draft style makes sense. It doesn't always pan out. There are guys that you can see that's just like they didn't. I mean, like Peyton Pritchard, looks like a great example right now currently with the Celtics. I don't remember where he got drafted, but it was not all that high. He's not a lottery pick. He's not super athletic. You're not looking at it and saying like, what is the ceiling for this guy? You're saying like there's a very low floor. The guy's a very competent player. He's smart. He's fundamental. He's this, that, and the other. He already kind of has that coming in, and he figures it out. I think with the NBA that having that athleticism, having given talent, the man, whatever you are, if you're 7 feet tall with a 10-foot wingspan, you can't teach that. That's there. Then you can say, what can we teach you to be? And I think drafting on that potential is huge. I think with the quarterback position, I don't specifically, not just the NFL in general. I mean, maybe the NFL in general a little bit. I haven't given it that much thought. But with the quarterback position itself, I don't know if I really think of that. I mean, I think there's going to be these every once in a while players like your Michael Vicks, your Lamar Jacksons who have incredible careers. They have this kind of like God-given athletic ability that you don't see that often. And you're saying if they can kind of put everything else together, they can turn into what we might think is like the best quarterback ever. I think that potential is there. But then you also see guys like Tom Brady can't move. The guy can't run out of the pocket to save his life. I mean, he did what he can, and you give him all the credit for any scrambles, any yards he was able to gain on the ground. But that wasn't his game. But it's like he had the mentality, he had the maturity, he had these things that you need as a quarterback in the pocket to be able to have. And if you can mix that with incredible athleticism and talent, like you're going to have the best quarterback of all time. I think that's why we look at Patrick Mahomes and we say, like, he's as close as we've seen to that. He doesn't have quite the Lamar athleticism and scrambling talent, all that stuff, but he's close, and he's definitely going to do it in big moments. But he seems to have that cerebral, in the moment, tense situations, like awareness to do things. And so I look at that, and to me, Bo Nix, I think that's why I'm giving him a little more credit. I mean, he almost has that Baker Mayfield. I get it didn't start out great, and he's had his trials and tribulations, but I think people should be, if they're not, looking at Baker Mayfield and saying if he would have gotten drafted to the New England Patriots when Tom Brady did and gotten that chance, like, what could he be today? I'm not saying he's Tom Brady. I'm not trying to say that he would be him. But what I'm saying is you're seeing potential. Like, the dude's bounced around from some of the worst franchises in the history of the league. I mean, not just even today, like the history. I mean, Carolina Panthers, the Browns, like, he has not been with good organizations structurally from top to bottom at all. And you're seeing some serious success in certain moments. Like, I think to me, the quarterback position specifically is one that you're saying, like, I don't really need to even necessarily see all this crazy potential talent. If we think you're at your peak, that might actually be good because you're not trying to add things, do things, adjust to things. You are what you are, but mentally, you're gonna get better. Every quarterback is gonna get better mentally. I mean, you have to. Like, there's no case. So to me, I got him a little bit higher. I know that was a little long-winded, but I do like him, and I'm gonna be the high guy in Bo Nix, even though I think a lot of people aren't that high on.
Okay, yeah. Well, since
Well,
you
that was
had him
my
a little
next pick,
higher,
so hopefully that
who do you
just counts
have
for that.
now as your number two? Since I threw Bo in at number three for us.
You had so Bo was there 3. So yeah, then I got Jaden, I guess, number 2. Again, I would have put Bo ahead of him. I like Jaden's talent that's there. I think again, you have those kind of very mobile quarterbacks every once in a while, but I don't think we're seeing that all that often. Even a Jalen Hurts, I think, is he's figuring out. He's becoming more of a Mahomes s. It's hard to describe, right? I think it's just hard. Like Lamar Jackson's they're doing quarterback designed run plays, and I think you're seeing Mahomes. It's like last second. Caleb's already kind of in. Caleb has that Mahomes feel where it's kind of last second when I need to scramble. You see even some of these slower quarterbacks that are just really good at being able to do that stuff. And, I think those guys who are known for really running. It's very hard to be successful. There's a couple of them out there, and those are good, but I don't think it's something that can last for a long time. So I like kind of the ceiling being a good spot, whether it's Cam Newton, something. I mean, he could maybe have a high ceiling. I just don't see it lasting all that long. I think we're already seeing it kind of come down in this first half. We'll see how they finish the year. But that was kind of my thought about midway through was, I think they're going to start trending downward. People are going to start coaching, designing up some defenses a little different, and it's going to be difficult for them. But yeah, I think potential wise, kind of where he's at, number 2 is absolutely, his peak.
Yeah, I was a little tempted to take Jaden at 3. Honestly,
Okay.
I think that he's got potentially a little higher ceiling. And could have a more likely scenario where Jaden were to win an MVP at some point or lead his team to a Super Bowl, kind of playing kind of that Superman type role on the team. I would agree. I think career wise, like the way he plays and his frame, I think he's probably unlikely to have the longest career of these guys. I mean, he's even, gotten dinged up a little bit this year. He had that rib injury that really slowed down his running game. Yeah, I think he's going to find that unless he's able to pack on some serious weight, he's going to have a hard time playing that same style of football that he played in college. And, everybody I think has seen the highlights of him in college not sliding and getting drilled
Yeah.
by dudes as he's running around. That's only worse in the NFL. And ask Drew Bledsoe about taking one unnecessary hit, and next thing you know, you're no longer the starting quarterback and you're getting shipped off somewhere else. So I think Jaden's got to learn how to protect himself if he wants to have a long career. We will see how he goes. I also think it says more. It's more about what I think of the number one guy on this list, which sounds like we both have Caleb at number 1. And it's not just from, preseason. I think Caleb is the number 1, guy of all these quarterbacks because what he's shown throughout this season. And he's shown growth and development and improvement throughout the year, especially in a tough situation. He started off, coaching game plans were not great. He has overcome that. He's overcome an offensive coordinator getting fired midseason. His head coach is probably gone at the end of the year, and he's continuing to get better. I just saw a stat too that Caleb is, if he averages 247 and a half yards per game the rest of the way this year, he's going to set the Bears all-time franchise record for pass yards in a single season. That probably says more about how bad Bears quarterbacks have been than how good he is, but still, that's super impressive to do in your first season or even be in the conversation to do. So, I like what Caleb has shown. I think this last week, even though they lost, he played, about as good as he's played all season. And that was against maybe the best defense that he has seen, because that Vikings defense under Brian Flores has been super solid. And so I was very impressed with his play. I think he's only going to get better. I think when they finally get the right coaching staff, which hopefully they do for him, his ceiling is, an MVP candidate perennial at some point.
Yeah. No, I mean, not a whole lot to add to that. I think that's pretty obvious. I think he's an easy guy to hate on coming out, and there's that much hype around him. People are saying he's a top 10 quarterback immediately. It's easy to hate on that. But yes, he's struggled at times. I think you do have to factor in the team play. There's been enough experience now with the Chicago Bears itself. I hate to say it, but unfortunately, the organization has not produced these quarterbacks. So I think there's enough. We've seen an offensive coordinator get fired to put some blame on what else is going on other than him. We've seen some incredible plays. We've some absolute terrible plays. I think we see what's possible there. I don't think we've seen enough to think he's dead in the water by any means. And again, everybody else has had their ups and downs, where they're at as well. So I think we're still looking at potential long term, what they can do. So yeah, I think he's still clearly the number one guy. Speaking of his coaching and what he's dealing with in Chicago, again, unfortunately, living in Chicago, we wanted to talk about the analytics stuff a little short on time. But yeah, some of these things as far as like going for two, kicking here, going for it here, this, that, and the other, like, what did I say, going for two instead of taking the extra point. These different things that people are doing where there's clearly significant risk involved. Is it analytics that are taking over? Is it coaches that are just out of their damn minds? What's going on with some of these things? And I don't know. I feel like we saw quite a few questionable coaching decisions in that regard this weekend.
Yeah, I think some of the analytics stuff has either gone too far or coaches are just maybe not even using it correctly. According to the like NFL stats, teams last season in 2023 were a little bit above 50% in 2-point conversion attempts. It's a little bit better than a coin flip that you're going to get the two over not getting anything. So, I can understand the rationale of going for two, right? But I feel like it's got to be a strategy that you're putting in place that makes sense. And I think the Bears example was one that I didn't understand at all. Right. So they're down by 2 touchdowns. They're down by 14 points. Yeah, 24-10. And they score a touchdown. So they get back into the game. And instead of kicking the extra point to be down by 7, they go for 2. They fail to get it. So now they're down 8. And to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense because what you're saying is like, well, if we fail this time, we'll go for it the next time. Well, why not just go kick the extra point twice? Now, if you've got, lack of faith in your kicking, which they have had 2 blocked field goals in the last 2 weeks, and that's not good. That being said, I don't understand the play for that. Now, I saw some argument online that, well, it ended up working out because the Vikings got a field goal, the Bears scored a touchdown, got the 2-point conversion the second time, and then were able to kick a field goal, tie it up. But at the end of the day, the Bears lost. So they got the second 2-point conversion, which was able to basically get them the 14 points that they had originally needed.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, I don't mind going for 2, but it's got to be a strategy that is going to improve your odds of winning the game. And I think going for 2 in that spot, all that did was make it more difficult because you were already, struggling to that point to keep up with the Vikings. The last thing you needed was, okay, well, we didn't get that. Now we have to get 8 points instead of 7 now. And you remove the possibility of winning in regulation. And that's what's annoying, right? Because to me, let's say instead of going for 2 that first time, they just kick the extra point. Now they're down by 7. The Vikings get that field goal. They're up by 10. If you're the Bears and you want to go for 2 the next time around so that a field goal wins you the game, I would at least be like, all right, that's a strategy. Now you're trying to win a football game, not trying to, I guess, tie a football game. Even then, I wouldn't like it. I think the only time I like going for 2 as opposed to kicking the extra point is when you're going to go from like 6-7, 2-3, or a big one is, at the end of a game, if it's the last possession and you have a chance to just outright win it. So I don't know what's going on. The Ravens also went for 2 in a weird spot. They were up by, I think they were up by 7, and they could have kicked the
Or the
extra point.
touchdown, we're up by 7. Yeah.
Yeah, they could have gone up by 8, which would have, and I get, you get the 2-point conversion. It's now a 2-possession game. But the flip side is, and it did work out for the Ravens in the end, they won the game. But in that game, what I don't understand is if you are looking at the stats and you're saying 2-point conversion attempts are, converted at just above 50%. If you go for 2 and you don't get it, and the Chargers come down and score a touchdown and they go for 2, statistically, they're probably going to get that because now you're 1 for 2 in the 2-point conversion attempts. So now you're down by 1 rather than tied or, not. Now, again, ended up working out. They ended up scoring, again to, extend that lead. But why didn't they go for 2 the next time? To make it a 16-point lead, potentially, instead of a, 15-point lead. I don't really understand kind of the going for 2 randomly. I feel like you either put in the strategy for the whole game or do it when it like truly makes a lot of sense, not in these like weird spots. So I don't get that.
Yeah, like you said, typically we seem to have a similar thought on these. And yeah, it was totally agreeing when we talked about this a little bit earlier. And I'm like, what the heck are these teams doing? Like the Bears, just kick 2 extra points at, again, what are they, 95%? Again, we saw some crazy ones this week. I think Siebert of the Red Commanders missed a Fairbomb, whatever the hell his name is, from the Texans, who's been great. Like, he missed an extra point. It's like, stuff can happen. Like, we understand that. But if you're saying it's like 95% for an extra point, this takes no work. This takes no effort. We just make the extra point. We tie the game with 2 touchdowns versus we're stressing out about making the second 2-point conversion, assuming we missed the first, which, again, like in some of those cases they did. You missed the first. Now you're stressing to make this just to get the tie game. So the only thing I could really think of, I was trying to like think of a compare, I was like, is there any way I could see their side, like what they're thinking? And I think, we've talked about the vibes, like the Eagles, Saquon coming in, like it's a big part of things. It's like New England's been going through that. Some of the stuff Gerard Mayo is saying is like, is it positive? Are people like taking that as motivation? Are they like, dude, this new coach is coming in talking shit about us. We don't like that. It's all about kind of figuring out your team and where you're at. The only reason for justification, which I could probably get with the Bears, the Ravens, I would be like, now I'm questioning kind of your coaching and where you guys think you're at mentally, is if you think you're already, you're in a spot that you should not be in. If the Ravens are up by 1 touchdown, I'm like, holy shit, we are lucky as hell to be winning by a single touchdown right now. Like, we should not be winning this game, or we are not better than this team. Let's go for the 2. If we can get it to 9, we can give up a touchdown. Like, we're going to play our asses off. But if we give up a touchdown with extra point, even with a 2-point conversion, we can still win this game if all we can do is hold the ball at the very end of the game. Now, I think they did it a little bit earlier in the game, so there's obviously some other stuff to that. But I'd be like, okay, that's reasonable. But I would also be like, is that really how you guys feel? You as the Ravens don't feel like you were the team that should be winning that game and be in the position to be there. Again, the Bears, kind of similar. You're down 2 touchdowns. It's 2 full touchdowns. There's no field goals involved in this. You have to score 2 touchdowns to come back. Division opponent, good defense against a rookie quarterback, all these things. If he's sitting there just being like, we have essentially no chance in this game. We're going to keep fighting our tails out. We're going to do everything we can to get in this game. But in theory, we really have no chance left. Let's go for the 2 here. We get that. Now, if somehow, like, everything goes our way and we get there, we make it happen. Like, hey, we could actually pull this out somehow when we had no reason to win. And the only reason I say that is because I look at like playing blackjack, going to the casino and you're sitting there playing blackjack, and it's like when I have an opportunity to put more money against their bad hand, kind of the flip flops. Like I feel like similar though. The house obviously has the advantage. They're making billions of dollars a year in the casino for a reason. They're crushing us as the individuals. So if I'm sitting there ever and think I even have a slight advantage over them, I want to hammer that home. I want to take advantage of it. So clearly, I think most of us agree. If you got an 11, you got an 8 and a 3 that show up, and the dealer's got a 6, you're doubling down on that all day long, right? We're doubling down on that. It doesn't always work, but you do it because you're saying, like, I have the advantage. The odds are I'm probably gonna get a 10 or at least a high enough card. They're not gonna get a high enough card to beat me. They're probably gonna bust. Let's throw more money out now when we think we have this slight advantage that we don't typically have. And I look at it for sure. If you end up with like that ace with like a 2 or a 3 or a 4, so you got like 13, 14, 15. If they don't have a face card or something showing, I'm doubling down on that because I don't care if I end up with a 16. I'm still assuming they're going to bust. I want to put more money out when I think somehow all of a sudden, kind of randomly in a shitty situation, I have the advantage. That would be the only reason I could find justification in that. So that's like a long way to say I'm okay with it if the coaches want to come out and tell us tomorrow we thought we didn't deserve to be ahead that much. We didn't think as the Bears we had a chance to even win that game. We were taking the full on risk when we had those opportunities. I would at least respect that. But I don't think they'll say it because they don't, there's the mojo and stuff with the team, and that's what's tough. I don't know if they're not going to say that. If that's what they're truly thinking, I can get it. Otherwise, I don't get it. If you're the Ravens, I think that is just incredibly stupid. I don't understand how you can sit there and be like, we could go for a 95% percentile extra point and make them have to go 50-50 to beat us. I'm taking those odds all day long, or to tie us. I should say to beat us, to tie us.
Yeah, and I would say, I would even say, like, if you're the Ravens and there's 2 minutes left in the game, okay, maybe that makes kind of some sense. But I believe they did that at the end of the third quarter. So there was a lot of football left to be played to try to make it a 9-point game versus an 8-point game. To me, it doesn't make sense to make that move right then and there. Also, if that's now that teams know that the Ravens are willing to do that, come playoff time, there's going to be some strategy involved behind that. Be like, hey, the Ravens might be willing to do this at the end of a game, so we need to be prepared for 2-point conversion attempts against them, more so than we, may have thought we needed to be. We talk about, that gamesmanship. One thing I think the Kansas City Chiefs do really well is I think they hold stuff back. And they wait until the right time to use certain plays, to make certain decisions, and they wait until the playoffs to do a lot of that stuff. And they wait until big moments. I don't think at the end of the third quarter in a game in the middle of your season is it the time for you to bust out the, hey, we're going to try to make this a 2-score game instead of a 1-score game, where even if it's a 1-score game, if you kick that extra point, the Chargers cannot win with 1 score. So it's a 1.5 score game is what I would call that, because they cannot beat you with 1 score. They have to get 2 to win. And if you're the Ravens, you don't think you can get 1 more score yourselves. It's an odd decision, and I just don't quite follow, why they're doing it. On the flip side, like going for it on 4th down, I think that's a good decision more often than not. I think more teams should be committed to going for it on 4th down, being like, hey, we're a 4th down team. Basically, if we get to our own 45, or if we get to the 40 to 45 yard line of the opposing team, we're basically going for everything on 4. We're treating it all as 4-down territory, because you can game plan for that. You can run. You can run the ball 3 times in a row for 3 yards or 2.5 yards even. Because if you average 2.5 yards a play and you do that 4 times, you've got yourself 10 yards. So you don't need, big plays if you're willing to commit to it. So I like going it forward on fourth because I think that those numbers bear out a lot better that, you're better off doing that than punting. But this 2-point conversion stuff, I think coaches are kind of misreading what's going on and going for it when it doesn't really deem itself necessary.
Yeah, couple odd calls there. I think most people, it was at least 50-50 trying to figure out like what the hell are
Well,
these guys thinking.
especially for the Bears too. Like it'd be one thing if the Bears coaching decisions have been top notch, and you have a coach that's got a track record of making really good coaching decisions. Instead, Eberflus, as much as I like the guy, he's had a lot of some strange calls made. That Hail Mary attempt, like he's the one in charge of the defense. That Hail Mary that you lost, like you had a QB spy on a 65-yard Hail Mary attempt. Why in the world did you have a guy spying the QB on that play? So, like, you're not building up a resume of, hey, I'm making good coaching calls to make one of those calls, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But,
You got to build up a little coaching equity to be able to pull off those calls. But speaking of, those two teams, we did not pick either one of them in our locks this past week. So touch on, your lock of the week this past week, but also do you have either of those two teams in your new lock of the week?
Yeah, so lock of the week last week, I got blown up again, unfortunately. Picked San Francisco plus 2.5. When I did that, I did expect Brock Purdy to play. Didn't necessarily think that, I'm not going to sit here and say that he would have made the difference and completely, but I do think that had the Packers had the game plan for Purdy instead of what was his name, Allen, that I mean I don't even know if that I didn't even know that guy was on their roster. Yeah, so bad game. I'm back to 6-4 after a 6-2 start. So 2 losses in a row and 2 bad ones. I need to get back in the win column. So this week I'm gonna pick one that gonna go with a similar idea from last week, but I think a better team, better matchup. And I've got the Rams minus 2.5. And they're playing the Saints this week. So it's a road game for the Rams, but they are only minus 2.5. I think they are much better than a field goal over the Saints. The Rams are playing for the division title still. They're a good football team. I do firmly believe that. I know they just got beat pretty bad by the Eagles, but I think that Rams team is capable of winning that division. I think they're the most capable of winning that division of all the teams, realistically. And I think the Saints have won 2 games. Well, they won 2 games in a row since they fired Dennis Allen. I think they're going to come back to earth a little bit and have another clunker. I don't think that Dennis Allen was the only thing that was stopping that team from being a juggernaut. So I've got the Rams minus 2.5. That's my lock of the week. We're going to get back in the win column.
Yeah, I like all that. Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, I feel like your locks sometimes are just like totally opposite or dead on. Obviously, you had a lot of nice wins early, and then the bad ones are just like flop somehow. And you didn't know Purdy. I think that's honestly a reasonable excuse or reasoning for not knowing. I mean, we did not know that when you picked it. And that is a big factor. I'm not saying Purdy's an MVP, but that is a big factor, and that makes a big difference. So that was unfortunate for you. I like the Rams. Yeah, I think they're solid. I like, again, to your point, the competitive nature in that division. Obviously, everything's up for grabs, so they got to win it. Saints, yeah, I think they got a little extra juice going on after the firing, and yeah, probably due to come down. That's just kind of the team they are. So I think that's reasonable. On the other hand, I took another Thursday night game, Pittsburgh minus 3.5. They still had a chance to make that happen at the end of that game. Yeah, I didn't love the way they finished it. My excuse, did not realize it was going to be a blizzard. I knew it was going to be cold, which I was not. I thought both teams could be fair well in that, but yeah, that was a crazy game. It was a ton of snow already. That might be one of the snowiest games this year. I mean, it's possible, even though we haven't started
And
snow.
those types of bad weather games like that, that always favors the underdog, which Cleveland clearly was. So,
Yeah.
that's tough when the weather breaks against you.
I mean, it's you got to play, both teams got to play, and we all get that. But Jordan Sport, I mean, it's clearly an advantage for them. It takes kind of the whole scheme and everything we had out of play, and it becomes more just a backyard brawl. And they beat them. Good for the Browns to get that win. But yeah, didn't expect that. So took that one. I'm 5-5. So we're still 11-9 on the season. Still positive. Yeah, we'd like to get on a little better roll here. We're going to take a different game. So I was kind of locking in on one other, but I think I went with the Steelers. I've been trying to now recently, because I wasn't early, sticking with my teams that I like. I'm going to go with the Eagles, +3 at the Ravens. Yeah, I just think the Eagles are a better team. I think they're in a really good spot. They're one of those teams where even as you're proving you're better, it's similar to the Lions, which is why it's tough to bet against the Lions right now. I mean, I think you could take the Lions against the spread, or with the spread every week and be crushing it, because they still feel like they need to prove something, right? Like throughout the regular season. They're not the Chiefs that can just relax and practice and do different plays and win to beat the Panthers by 3. That's fine for them. They've won 2 in a row. They're entitled to be able to do that, and us still give them the respect of being a proper team and people knowing they are. The Lions are like, no, we got to come out and win by 20, 30, 40 every single game. And I think the Eagles are in a similar spot. They had that funk at the end of last year. They were kind of working at the beginning of the year, and now they're starting on this roll. And I think it's important that they stay on this roll. If they lost this game, am I going to think they're done for and they're not able to make the run or be the second best team in the NFC? No, I don't think that. But I think this would be a really good win. I think this would be a good opportunity to show us, hey, the Ravens have been getting a lot of credit based on what they did last year. They have more loss than us. They have a worse record than us. We think we have the MVP versus them having the MVP at running back. Quarterbacks are comparable. Lamar's numbers are way better, but I really like Jaden. Receivers are better on the Eagle. Defense is way better at the Eagle. I think it's an opportunity to really smack them in the mouth for mainly the defense to really step up, shut the Ravens down. This would be a good one. I think if the Ravens could win, or I'm sorry, the Eagles could win this, 24, 28, if they get in on mid 20 range and hold the Ravens to under 21. I think that would be a really, really good win for them, that the defense would step up against a very potent offense. I think they can do it. I think the Eagles are just a better team, and I think they're as well motivated as the Ravens at this point. So getting a field goal, even as a backdoor cover, whatever, I think they got this.
Yeah. I mean, I like that pick a lot because outside of the Lions, I mean, the Eagles are the hottest team in the NFL right now. They're beating everybody pretty handedly. That game they played this last weekend against the Rams was a very impressive win over a Rams team that I think is pretty solid. So I'm more impressed with what the Eagles did than what the Ravens did this last week, and I think the Ravens and the Chargers. I think that was a closer game than what the score indicated. I think those two teams are pretty comparable. I think they play again in the playoffs. I could see the Chargers winning that game the next time around. Whereas I don't know that I think the Rams can beat the Eagles right now. I think the only team I think the Eagles can lose to in the NFC is probably the Lions. And even then, I think that's going to be a matchup. So I like that game a lot. You're getting 3 points too. So, that's always nice when the team you think is going to be the outright winner is also getting some points too, just for a little extra cushion.
Yeah.
But
yeah, let's see what they can do. Should be a few games. We got Thanksgiving coming up, so I mean, one dud on the schedule, but hopefully a couple other good games on Thanksgiving. We got one on Friday, so yeah, I mean, a heck of a weekend, if you will, of football coming up. A lot of games.
yeah,
Not a ton of
take
the.
a little afternoon nap on Thanksgiving during the Cowboys Giants game after you've watched Bears Lions and then get to watch a little Packers Dolphins. You
There
get
you
two
go.
good games and a nap in between.
They might have done that on purpose. I think that's actually not a bad. Either take the nap or you're traveling. Maybe you like stop at a family early, go to the family later. It's either you're in the car or taking a nap. I think it'll work out nicely.
Give you just enough time. All right. Well, that's all for us this week. Thank you for listening. As always, just don't forget to like and subscribe. It means a lot to us. Ring the bell on YouTube. You can get notified for when we post new videos. And you can do the same on.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram as well if you're listening. Yeah, we're trying to throw some action activity out there, some clips on Instagram, trying to tweet, get involved on Twitter or X as they call it now. So, yeah, follow us on there and we'll definitely engage with you.
That's right. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody. Peace out.